Right now, somewhere in the world, a woman is lying next to a man she just shared the most intimate moment with, wondering what's going through his mind. She's analyzing every breath, every silence, every subtle shift in his energy. And here's the shocking truth. What he's actually thinking and feeling is nothing like what she imagines. In fact, it's often the complete opposite of what women believe happens in a man's mind after intimacy. Today, I'm going to reveal the hidden psychology that governs men's thoughts and emotions in those vulnerable moments after physical connection. This isn't just speculation. This is based on decades of psychological research, including insights from Carl Jung's revolutionary work on the masculine psyche. What you're about to discover will completely change how you understand men and transform your relationships forever. But before we dive into these mind-blowing revelations, if you're ready to unlock the deepest secrets of masculine psychology and finally understand what really drives men in relationships, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, what I'm about to share will be the most eye-opening thing you hear today. The first thing you need to understand is that men and women process intimacy through completely different psychological frameworks. While women often experience intimacy as a deepening of emotional connection that flows naturally into future possibilities and relationship discussions, men's minds work in an entirely different way. Carl Jung discovered that men have what he called an anima, their inner feminine aspect that remains largely unconscious. After intimacy, this anima becomes temporarily activated, creating a complex psychological state that most men don't even understand themselves. They feel simultaneously vulnerable and protective, connected yet needing space, grateful yet sometimes anxious. This contradiction creates what Jung called the tension of opposites within the masculine psyche. In those moments after intimacy, a man is often battling between his desire to merge completely with you and his equally strong need to maintain his individual identity. This internal struggle manifests in ways that women frequently misinterpret. For instance, that moment when he becomes quiet or seems distant. Most women assume he's regretting what happened or planning his escape. In reality, he's often processing intense emotions that he doesn't have the vocabulary or framework to express. Men aren't taught to navigate the vulnerable feelings that surface after deep connection, so they retreat inward to make sense of what they're experiencing. Jung also identified what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we try to hide or deny. After intimacy, both partners' shadows become temporarily visible. For men, this often includes fears of inadequacy, vulnerability, or loss of control. These aren't conscious thoughts. They're unconscious reactions that influence his behavior in those crucial post-intimacy moments. One of the most surprising revelations about men's post-intimacy psychology is what researchers call the protector activation. The moment after physical connection, something primal awakens in the masculine psyche. It's not just about feeling close to you. It's about an unconscious shift into guardian mode. This explains why some men suddenly become more attentive to sounds in the house, more aware of the environment, or even slightly restless. This protector instinct isn't romantic in the way movies portray it. It's deeper and more complex. Jung would describe this as the activation of the archetypal masculine role of provider and protector. Even in modern relationships where these roles aren't necessary for survival, the psychological programming remains active. This can create an internal tension where he feels responsible for your well-being while simultaneously feeling vulnerable himself. What makes this even more complex is that many men experience what psychologists call post-intimacy anxiety. This isn't about regretting the experience or wanting to escape. It's actually the opposite. It's anxiety about whether they've measured up, whether you're satisfied, whether they've shown themselves to be worthy of your trust and vulnerability. This anxiety often manifests as overthinking. While you might be basking in the afterglow, his mind could be racing with questions. Did I make her feel good? Was I present enough? Did I say the right things? This internal dialogue can make him appear distant when he's actually deeply concerned about your experience and his performance. Jung's concept of the inferior function also plays a crucial role here. For many men, emotional expression and vulnerability represent their least developed psychological functions. After intimacy, when these functions are suddenly required, they can feel overwhelmed and inadequate. This isn't a character flaw. It's a developmental reality that affects how they process and respond to intimate experiences. Another fascinating aspect is what happens to a man's sense of time after intimacy. While women often want to talk, connect, and plan future moments together, men frequently experience a kind of temporal disorientation. The intensity of the intimate experience can make them feel like they need to recalibrate their sense of reality and their place within the relationship dynamic. This explains the seemingly contradictory behavior where a man can be incredibly present and connected during intimacy, but then seem to mentally check out immediately afterward. It's not disrespect or disinterest. It's a psychological need to integrate the experience and figure out what it means for his identity and the relationship moving forward. Understanding this can completely change how you interpret his post-intimacy behavior and respond in ways that support rather than pressure him during these vulnerable moments. Perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of men's post-intimacy psychology is their relationship with emotional vulnerability. Women often assume that after sharing such an intimate moment, emotional openness should naturally follow. But for most men, the exact opposite occurs. The more vulnerable they've allowed themselves to become physically, the more their psychological defenses activate to protect against further exposure. This isn't conscious or intentional. It's what Jung called the compensation principle. When one aspect of the psyche becomes overly activated, the opposing force automatically emerges to restore balance. After the ultimate vulnerability of physical intimacy, many men unconsciously compensate by becoming more guarded emotionally. This can manifest as sudden preoccupation with work, needing to check their phone, or simply becoming quieter and more introspective. What's particularly fascinating is how men's brains process the neurochemical cascade that follows intimacy. While women typically experience a surge of oxytocin that enhances bonding and connection, men experience a more complex cocktail that includes both bonding hormones and stress hormones. This biological reality creates an internal conflict between wanting to connect and needing to retreat. Many men also experience what researchers call achievement anxiety after intimacy. Unlike the performance anxiety that might occur beforehand, this is a post-experience evaluation where they mentally review every moment, analyzing whether they succeeded in creating a meaningful experience for both partners. This internal review process can make them seem distracted when they're actually deeply engaged in processing the significance of what just occurred. Jung's work on the collective unconscious also provides insight into men's post-intimacy thoughts. Men carry ancestral programming about intimacy that includes both the drive to bond and the evolutionary imperative to remain vigilant and ready for action. This creates a psychological tension where part of them wants to relax completely into connection, while another part remains alert and slightly on edge. The timing of emotional expression is another crucial factor that women often misunderstand. While women might feel most emotionally open immediately after intimacy, men often need what psychologists call integration time. Their deepest feelings about the experience and about you might not surface for hours or even days. This delayed emotional processing doesn't indicate a lack of feeling. It indicates a different processing style. Some men also experience what can only be described as identity recalibration after intimate moments. If the experience was particularly meaningful or different from their past experiences, they need time to figure out how this new version of themselves fits with their existing self-concept. This internal work requires mental space and can make them appear distant when they're actually undergoing significant internal growth. The most profound aspect of men's post-intimacy psychology involves their relationship with future planning and commitment. Here's where women's assumptions are most dramatically wrong. While women often interpret a man's post-intimacy behavior as an indicator of his relationship intentions, men's minds work in the complete opposite direction. The more meaningful the intimate experience was for him, the more likely he is to become temporarily overwhelmed by the implications. This creates what Jung would call a psychological crisis of meaning. When intimacy exceeds a man's expectations or touches him more deeply than anticipated, it can trigger an existential evaluation of his entire life direction. He starts asking himself questions like, am I ready for this level of connection? Do I deserve this? What would it mean to fully commit to this experience? These aren't signs of commitment phobia or emotional unavailability. They're signs of a man taking the experience so seriously that he needs to evaluate whether he can live up to its significance. This psychological process can make him seem distant or uncertain when he's actually considering how to reorganize his entire life around the possibility of deeper connection with you. Men also experience what researchers call post-intimacy goal conflict. After a particularly meaningful intimate experience, they often feel torn between the desire to repeat and deepen that connection and their existing life goals, responsibilities, or self-imposed limitations. This internal conflict can create behavior that seems contradictory, expressing deep appreciation while simultaneously creating distance. Another crucial element is how men process the vulnerability they've just experienced. Unlike women, who often feel empowered by vulnerability, many men feel temporarily destabilized by it. They're not used to being completely open and unguarded. So after intimacy, they need to figure out how to integrate this vulnerable aspect of themselves back into their daily identity. Jung's concept of the transcendent function is particularly relevant here. This is the psychological process by which opposing forces within the psyche create something new. After meaningful intimacy, men often unconsciously sense that they're being called to evolve into a more complete version of themselves. This evolutionary pressure can feel simultaneously exciting and terrifying, leading to behavior that seems unpredictable. The relationship between intimacy and a man's sense of masculine identity is also complex. Many men have been conditioned to believe that true masculinity involves emotional control and independence. After experiencing the deep interdependence and emotional openness of intimate connection, they may struggle to reconcile this experience with their understanding of what it means to be a man. This can lead to what appears to be regressive behavior, suddenly focusing on work, sports, or other traditionally masculine activities, when it's actually an attempt to integrate the new emotional experience with their existing sense of self. The most surprising revelation about men's post-intimacy psychology is their relationship with gratitude and appreciation. While women might expect men to express thankfulness or appreciation immediately, most men experience gratitude on such a deep level that it actually renders them temporarily speechless. This isn't indifference. It's the opposite. It's appreciation so profound that they don't trust themselves to express it adequately. Jung identified this as part of what he called the transcendent function, moments when experiences are so meaningful that they temporarily overwhelm our normal capacity for expression. For many men, truly intimate experiences fall into this category. They feel so grateful and moved that any words seem inadequate, leading to silence that women often misinterpret as disinterest. This is compounded by men's relationship with emotional expression in general. Most men have been conditioned to believe that emotional expression should be reserved for the most significant moments, so after intimacy, they're often internally debating whether this experience qualifies as one of those moments. This internal evaluation process can make them appear detached when they're actually trying to determine the appropriate level of emotional response. Another fascinating aspect is how men's post-intimacy thoughts often turn to protection and provision, not in the traditional sense, but in terms of emotional and psychological safety. After experiencing your vulnerability and trust, many men unconsciously shift into planning mode, thinking about how to create an environment where such intimacy can flourish. This might manifest as thoughts about the future, about improving themselves, or about removing obstacles to deeper connection. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who values deep psychological insights about relationships. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell because we're diving even deeper into the hidden psychology of men and what really drives their behavior in relationships. Your understanding of masculine psychology is about to reach a whole new level. The timing of men's emotional processing is perhaps the most crucial thing for women to understand. While women often experience their deepest emotions about intimate experiences in the immediate aftermath, men's most profound feelings often surface hours, days, or even weeks later. This delayed emotional processing isn't a sign of shallow feelings. It's a sign of deep psychological work happening beneath the surface. Men also experience what can be called intimacy integration anxiety, the challenge of figuring out how to maintain the level of connection they experienced during intimacy in the context of everyday life. They worry about whether the magic can be sustained, whether they can live up to the emotional heights they've just experienced, and whether the relationship can handle the intensity of their true feelings. Understanding these psychological realities can transform how you respond to men in those crucial post-intimacy moments and create space for deeper connection rather than misunderstanding. The ultimate truth about men's post-intimacy psychology is that their silence often contains more depth than their words ever could. When a man becomes quiet after meaningful intimacy, he's not checking out. He's checking in with parts of himself that he rarely accesses. This internal dialogue includes processing his feelings about you, evaluating the significance of what just occurred, and often planning how to become worthy of the trust you've just placed in him. Men also experience what Jung would call individuation pressure after profound intimate experiences. Individuation is the process of becoming who you're meant to be, and meaningful intimacy often catalyzes this process in men. After connecting with you so deeply, they feel compelled to examine whether they're living up to their potential, whether they're the man they want to be for you, and what changes they need to make to deserve this level of connection. This pressure can manifest as restlessness, distraction, or what appears to be withdrawal, but it's actually the opposite. It's engagement with personal growth and transformation. The more impact you've had on him during intimacy, the more likely he is to enter this period of internal evaluation and potential change. Another crucial aspect is how men process the shift from physical connection back to everyday reality. For many men, intimate moments represent a temporary suspension of their normal psychological defenses and social roles. Returning to regular life requires them to figure out how to integrate the openness they just experienced with their daily identity and responsibilities. This integration process can take time and often requires mental space. When men seem to disappear into their thoughts after intimacy, they're often unconsciously working to bridge these two aspects of their experience: the vulnerable, open man they were during intimacy, and the competent, controlled man they need to be in the world. Men's relationship with the memory of intimate experiences is also unique. While women often want to talk about and analyze what happened, men typically prefer to preserve the memory internally, almost like protecting something sacred. They fear that too much discussion might diminish the purity of the experience or force them to put words to feelings that transcend language. The most important thing to understand is that men's post-intimacy behavior is rarely about you, and almost always about their relationship with themselves. Their silence, their need for space, their apparent distraction. These are signs of internal processing, not rejection or regret. When you understand this psychological reality, you can respond to men's post-intimacy behavior with patience and curiosity rather than anxiety and assumption. You can give them the space they need to process while maintaining your own center and security. This understanding transforms those potentially confusing moments into opportunities for deeper connection and mutual respect. The man lying next to you after intimacy isn't thinking what you think he's thinking. He's thinking something far more complex, profound, and ultimately more devoted than you ever imagined.